All right, so let's talk about my 500i. So I bought this saw back last spring. This is back when they were kind of hard to find. So I found a shop that had one. I drove 2 hours to get it. And then I just went ahead and ported it. I cut the base 60,000s. I cut the squish band in 2 steps. So this Wiseco piston that's in there, I've got 2 of them. The Wiseco piston that's in there has this dome on it. So I just used the stock piston. This is the stock piston. I used the stock piston to get the squish right. So I just used a flat cutter on my mandrel to get this the squish band height right squish. I run 24,000 squish, and then I did a second step to cut this this angle here for that pop up because I cut 60,000s off the base. So I did a second step here where I made a cutter that matched this and just was a little bit higher so I wouldn't have any clearance issues in the combustion chamber. So I had to do it in 2 steps. That's the way to do it. I tried it the other way. I tried to have like a compound, like a flat, and then a curved up cutter, and that didn't cut very well. So I did it in 2 steps, and it was nice, smooth, and clean. Do it in 2 steps like that. Just used some solder, some soft solder. I think it's 30,000 solder to measure it. So I measured it with the stock piston because they're the same height, pin to crown, to get, the squish here on the edge. And then I also did, 4 pieces of solder in these, all 4 corners to get the squish for this pop-up. And that seemed to work pretty good. The other thing that I've tried is I bought a second cylinder here, and I tried this 660 Wiseco piston in there. I cut a 5-degree angle here, and then I took 40,000s off at the edge. So it's now, instead of 120 thousandths from the top of the ring groove to the top of the crown, now it's 80 thousandths. That's what I did there. I cut the chamber to match. I just made an angled cutter to get that angle so you can kind of see what the squish band looks like, hopefully. This is what the intake looks like on both saws. Kind of got the shape like that. So when you have the piston in there, let me drop this guy in. You can see it pretty much is perfect for when the piston's at top dead center. So you have as large of intake as possible, and it helps get around that little tonsil piece that's in here that the piston kind of sits down on. It kind of goes in there like that. My finger's kind of showing how it goes in there. There's the exhaust. I always polish the exhaust. Kind of can see. So with the Wiseco piston, I don't think these are available anymore. I think everyone's kind of bought off what they had up. But this is the exhaust side of the piston. This is the intake side. You can see the intake side is shorter than the exhaust side. So you have to clearance the case a little bit in order to get the piston to sit in there flush. You can see how the exhaust side actually is kind of rounded there on this edge right here. So you got to clearance the exhaust side because this one's flat, and then you also have to clearance the intake side. Oh, yeah, the intake side, whoops. It's the same depth. So you have to clearance the intake side so that the piston can go all the way down and not hit the case. But that was pretty easy to do. Just took a little bit of time. So let's go over the numbers on this cylinder here. 6,000s off the base, squish 24,000s, exhaust is at 98, transfers are 122, and the intake is at 80, 79, 80. This current setup runs pretty good. I think the 500i is like, for whatever reason, it seems that you need to run it for a certain period of time. I estimate that it's about 15 tanks of fuel for it to finally run like what it's supposed to run. So during that initial time, this saw, you could just smell the exhaust. It seemed like it was running rich. It was dumping way more fuel in, which is why I think that people say, oh, the 500i burns a lot of fuel. I don't think it burns really any more fuel than any other similar size saw that I have, like my 440 hybrid, my FarmerTech 440 hybrid that has a 460 OEM D-chamber cylinder on it. I don't think this saw really burns any more fuel than that, or if it does, it's really not noticeable. But what I would say is back when it was running really rich, when it was newer, it definitely did burn more fuel. So it takes like 15 tanks like to get it broken in. I mean, 15 to 20 is what I would say. Somewhere in that range is about what it takes to get it to actually run like what it's supposed to. And none of my other M-tronic saws are like that, but this one was. But yeah, so it's got a velocity stack on it. This was the cheapest option that was out there, and I figured I would try this one. This is, I think, before the max flow like came out, so I just got this one instead. It was cheaper. I think a max flow is like $100, and this one was like maybe 40 or something like that for the tube filter and the velocity stack that's underneath here. It's made out of billet aluminum. You can kind of see it in there. Dyed the top cover black. I'm running a West Coast side cover. Non-captured bar nuts. I don't like the captured bar nuts, so I opted for the non-captured bar nut side cover for this 500. I'm running eBay dogs on it. I like the West Coast dogs, but I like to use as much of the bar as I can, so these ones are a little bit shorter. So those are the ones I'm running on it. Here's the exhaust mod. So it's got one West Coast saw port on the top there. That's like the large thin one is what fits under here without any cutting on the plastics. West Coast bark box on there, and then I opened up the original port, and then I also milled out that little baffle thing that's in the muffler around the exhaust port. So I've also done that as well. I think that's pretty much it as far as like what mods. Yeah, that's pretty much it as far as the mods on this saw. But so far it's been running really good. This is probably my favorite saw for cutting trees down. I don't know why, but every tree that I cut is perfect as far as, you know, the face cut, the back cut. They're pretty much perfect. I always get them like pretty much perfectly in line. I don't know if it has to do with the shape of this handle. It's kind of got a unique curve on the handle here, and then this the full wrap kind of sticks a little bit more forward. But every tree that I've cut with this 500i has always been perfect, and it's with my other saws, they haven't been perfect. I don't know necessarily why that is. If I'm just getting better at cutting trees down. I used to not really cut much of any down because I've mainly just been doing kind of storm cleanup from an ice storm we had a couple years ago that took down a bunch of trees. But now that I'm back to cutting some trees down, I mean, this is my favorite saw for that. I would say my three favorite saws are my 440 hybrid, my 400C, which is still, it's just bolt-on, no porting done to it yet. Maybe I'll get to that this winter. And this saw here. This saw in the ported form, I would say, is almost or just as fast as my 661. It doesn't quite have as much torque as the 661, but it does have more, I would say, like, it cuts fast, a little bit more chain speed, cuts faster, especially in like 24-inch wood, which is mostly what I'm cutting. My 661 was the first M-tronic saw that I had. That was kind of like the first one. I like the M-tronic. I prefer that now over the, you know, standard carb. But I still like my 440. The 440 is faster in smaller wood. It's got faster chain speed in the smaller wood. Even with the 98 exhaust roof, I think the M-tronic system won't let this one rev quite as high as, you know, the carbureted saw will, because you can, you know, just dial the carb into how fast you want it to pull in the cut. But this one seems to be a little bit limited there. So this saw it's definitely got more power, more torque, but it seems that the M-tronic kind of limits its RPM in the cut. So the 440 is a little bit faster in smaller wood, but once you get to like 18-20-inch wood, this one's faster. You can lean on it harder. You can run a little bit more aggressive chain, even with an 8-tooth. I mean, it'll pull just fine. And pretty much all the wood that I cut is all hardwood. I don't cut any any softwood really at all. We don't really have many maples, and the pine that we have here is actually like pretty hard. I wouldn't really say that it, like the softest wood that I cut is probably maple, and we don't really have that many maple trees, but mostly cutting oak. I can show you this chain real quick. This is kind of my grind. I have a Symington 451C. That's what I sharpen all my chains on now. This is a 3/8 low pro chain, Canon Super Mini 24-inch. I just threw this on here just because I'm cutting a little bit smaller trees and I wanted to get a little bit more wedge lift, have a little bit more room to bang some wedges in the back to get the trees to go where I want them to go, make them easiest to cut and not hit any other smaller trees. So this is what I've been using for this. This bar is not, you do not want to be making any down and up cuts on like a tree that's under any tension, because you will break the chain. That kind of, and that's probably kind of hard on chains, but this chain here is not strong enough for that. And also you have to run a 7-tooth. If you try to run an 8-tooth on this, you will just constantly throw the chain. The back of the bar here is actually a little bit thinner than your standard bars that go on these bigger saws. So you have to run a 7-tooth. That's just another little thing that I've noticed. But yeah, so hopefully this video is helpful. Any questions, just put them below. Thanks for watching.